Hello and welcome to IWCTV NOW. My name's Harry Chapman and today we're going to be talking about the shortage of careers on the Isle of Wight and if there is a solution to this issue. Joining me in the studio today is Joe Davis and Janet Stevens. We'll be talking to them shortly about this topic, but for now let's look at the report from our field reporter Maddie Wilson.
The Isle of Wight is not only a place of beauty but a place of high unemployment, struggling businesses and redundancies. In January 2017, 1,680 people were claiming job seekers allowance on the Isle of Wight, a dramatic increase from 1,222 in June 2015. This is double the rate in the southeast, with figures of 2.4% and the island's figure being 4.2%. As well as this, 2% of 16-17-year-olds on the Isle of Wight are NEETs.
So why the sudden increase in those claiming job seekers allowance? Could it be because of the amount of businesses closing on the island? HMV, Thorntons, Adams, Stead & Simpsons, Jessops and Blockbuster are just a few of many. As well as this, the closure of Camp Hill Prison made 400 people redundant. Is this why we have a large outflow of 15 to 29-year-olds moving to the mainland, commonly known as the brain drain, because young people can no longer see a future career here?
Unless you're going into teaching or catering or, well, eco-manufacturing, such as working on building wind turbines, there isn't really much here. Most people want to go to the mainland and find jobs. So unless we really invest in the local economy, most people will be leaving the Isle of Wight. It's just going to be old people here with a terrible dependency ratio.
Health dominates the largest sector of employment on the island, followed by retail. Although there has been a shift towards construction with an increase of 23%, agricultural outputs have declined by 10% and manufacturing by 4%, and the public sector is yet to further decrease.
Is it possible that many have switched to self-employment as another way to support the island's economy? In 2015, 10,300 people were self-employed, an increase of 19%. However, this has its setbacks since 43 traders were recorded to have contracted business deadline for help in 2014. According to Claire King, the Money Advice Trust's manager, the surge in the number of self-employment is one of the consequences of the recession.
Hello and welcome back. So firstly, do you think that there is a wide variety of jobs on the island?
I mean, from my experience, not really at all. I mean, there's a lot of, for young people, you know, a lot of the kind of waitressing, working behind a shop counter type stuff. But even that, for a lot of people, can be hard to come by. I had to search for a very long time until I got my first job. But once you leave college, leave sixth form, looking for full-time work, they talked about in the program the brain drain. I think that's a real issue, isn't it? Because there's not many opportunities for people looking for secure full-time work. They mentioned healthcare and teaching, and I think those are good areas in the Isle of Wight. But I want to go into the law. Obviously, you can't do that on the Isle of Wight. I know people who want to go into like media, like journalism. Not many opportunities for that on the Isle of Wight. I think it is a real issue. Yeah.
Janet?
Actually, I think actually there are more opportunities than we make people aware of, and I think what a lot of people don't realise is that there are some really high-tech companies here developing some really good quality, good businesses. I think that there are more opportunities, but the problem is that information just isn't getting into the schools, and so I think what we're probably not doing right on the island is making sure that young people know about the opportunities. I think just picking up on law and those areas, the new higher level apprenticeships which lead into degrees, which we're doing here at the college, will include things like law and higher management opportunities, which give young people an opportunity to actually go for a high level position but not have to leave the island and go to university, but still gain the degree. So they might not all want a degree, Another area, so I think the composites manufacturing, the technology, I think that's a real growth area on the island. Renewables, as you said, but an area surprisingly that there's a shortage is chefs, and not enough young people actually want to be chefs. But there's a real shortage there on the island. So I think you're right. There are opportunities there, but not always the right ones for the right people. So.
Okay. Would you say it's more of a challenge to get a job as a young person on the Isle of Wight rather than somewhere on the mainland like London or Southampton?
Yes and no. I think there's probably not the same breadth of job vacancies and opportunities. But what you have to remember is that the competition, if you're applying for a job in London, is far greater. So you'd get thousands and thousands applying for a job, whereas here we'll get, tens or hundreds. It's so I think you kind of have to weigh that up. So although there might be more opportunities and more vacancies in London, you are facing very fierce competition for everything you apply for.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think that's an interesting point you picked up on there. But I think, well, from my experience at least, it is really difficult on the Isle of Wight because obviously there just aren't as many places. And I agree with the point you made that obviously if you're applying in London, you're applying against more people. But I don't think it scales correctly because, well, I mean, I like to think my CV was all right, but when I was last year going around, I went to every cafe in Newport, put in my place, and basically they were like, "Yeah, you seem all right, but there's just too many people applying for these jobs." And I don't know, my experience with my friends who live, in other areas of the country, especially in sort of metropolitan areas like you mentioned London or Birmingham, even Southampton or Portsmouth. Yeah, there are more people, but there's way more jobs because there just isn't the market on the Isle of Wight, so they can't produce as many jobs as we need.
I think you've made a really good point because it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you go in, as you have done, the first thing they're looking for is obviously your attitude, your everything about you, kind of enthusiasm. The just simple fact that you look like the sort of person who would be dedicated. But the one thing is experience.
Exactly, yeah.
And if they don't, so it's a very difficult situation if you're a young person because if you're not able to get that experience, how can you then?
And you can't get the experience until you've had the experience.
It disadvantages you for everything you apply for.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you believe to be the cause of lack of careers on the island?
Well, I mean, for me, I don't pretend to be an expert, but from my looking at it, it's what I mentioned earlier, which is that we have a population of 120, 130,000, so there isn't the market for hundreds and thousands of small cafes and restaurants on the Isle of Wight. We can only have as many businesses and as many places to work as there is the market for. And obviously we are an isolated area, so it's very difficult to, I have friends who live on the outskirts of Southampton, they can work in Southampton. I live about as far from Southampton as they do, but I can't, afford to get the ferry or whatever every Saturday. I just don't think there's enough people to produce enough jobs.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of the businesses on the island are lifestyle businesses. So they're people who have reached a certain age and want to set up a B&B or a small cafe, don't particularly want to employ anybody, want to run it themselves, when they feel like opening. And so I think that's sort of a predominant factor here. But I think the other thing is where the growth is, which is in the...
Sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there because we're running out of time on this segment. Apologies.
We'll never know where the growth is.
Sorry, thank you very much. Shortly we'll be talking about cyberbullying and social media. For now, I draw your attention to Maddie Wilson with this report.
As we all know, cyberbullying is a massive issue when it comes to social media. The internet gives people the ability to say what they want whilst remaining completely anonymous and not see the impact their words have on someone. With no way to get away from social media, people even find themselves being bullied in their own homes. Websites such as Facebook and Twitter contain millions of users, and there are many forms of cyberbullying through using these websites, such as harassment and exclusion. So just how bad has the cyberbullying problem got, and can we really stop it? A 2016 report indicates that 34% of students aged 12 to 17 had been a victim of cyberbullying, and 11.5% had participated in cyberbullying in the past year. 54% of teens have witnessed cyberbullying on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and more. Teens who reported cyberbullying said it was because of their appearance, their intelligence, their race, sexuality, financial status, religion, and other. Compare that to a survey conducted in 2012 in which 28% of children aged 11 to 16 had experienced something distressing in the past year, shows that cyberbullying is on the rise.
So it's clear that cyberbullying is on the rise, but in some ways that's to be expected with the ever-increasing popularity of social media. The real issue is what's being done for the victims of cyberbullying and how can people avoid it. In the past year alone, Childline held over 11,000 counselling sessions with young people about online issues. Although there are people you can talk to and offer you help, only 22% of children who are upset talk to someone about it face to face, which raises the question, why are young people not talking about this? Are they afraid, or do they simply not know? I'm Maddie Wilson from IWCTV NOW, and it's back to the studio.
Hello and welcome back to IWCTV. Oh no, sorry. Thank you. Oh, no. Welcome back to the show. Now let's talk about cyberbullying and social media. We have in the studio Carlo Yates and Margaret Fraser. First of all, what I want to know is how far can the act of cyberbullying affect someone's life, Carlo?
I think it really depends on how far it's taken, because we all read the stories and Facebook and things about how people have gone to the extent where someone has ended up killing themselves and things such as that. It really does depend how heavily someone is picked on. I think probably 99% of people at some point in their life have experienced it at whatever age. And it does heavily depend on what they do about it and how far people push.
Okay, Margaret?
I think when people are cyberbullied, there's overwhelming feelings of isolation, vulnerability, fear, anger, a whole lot of emotions that one feels that can lead to both physical and emotional problems. People who've been bullied can get very depressed, anxious. There's problems often at school or college of absenteeism because they don't want to go in. They're afraid to go onto social networking sites, so their social life and emotional life can close in on them. And as Carlo was saying, it can be varied. It can very sadly occasionally lead as far as suicide, but lots and lots of different problems and emotions, I think.
Okay. Why do you think people tend to shy away from asking for help when they're being cyberbullied?
I think a number of reasons. One is a feeling that nobody can help. I think often young people don't feel their schools and colleges take it seriously enough. Sometimes there's a fear, perhaps with younger children, that their mobile phones can be taken away from them, and just an embarrassment at times, and just being frightened to perhaps deal with it and talk about it, and not being aware, I think, as you were saying, how common it can be.
Yeah. Carlo?
I think it's partially, I think Margaret really kind of hit it straight on the head there. It is a very fierce, striking thing, and a lot of people just kind of, I think a lot of people try to blank it out and pretend it's not actually happening, which I suppose is the entire idea of the blocking capabilities on most websites, but of course not everyone is willing to do that because of the, again, threats and abuse thrown at them.
I think too, people are often frightened if they report it that the situation is going to get worse, that the bullies will take revenge, or
and obviously that could lead to
violence or yes, I think often that's a worry.
Do you think the social media sites need to do more to prevent cyberbullying and help those who are being bullied? Like, obviously we have blocking mechanisms. Do you think they could do more?
Yes, I think that's an interesting question, because I think there's a big debate at the moment. We've got it with Twitter, with trolling, with terrorism legislation, that are these platforms for debating? Are they, as I say, platforms for people to express their views, or are they, in some ways, are they publishers? So how responsible are they? So I think you've got a fundamental moral issue that some of the companies aren't looking at. You've also got the problem that many of them are international companies, so not always subject to one particular legal system. But certainly, I think they could be doing a lot more. Carlo would probably know better than I. They often don't respond quick enough, I think, is one of the things I've heard.
Yeah, I think a lot of people won't report it because of that reason, because you put your complaint forward, but you're sat there thinking nothing's really going to get done, but at the same time I don't know much more what that could be done. You can always tell someone off and block them, but they can always come back.
Yeah.
I think we need to do a lot more to educate people about their own security. We did a little session in the college a couple of years ago where IT students did a little survey, and I would say a third of students and staff didn't know how to reset their Facebook settings to improve their privacy.
What is your experience with cyberbullying? Both of you, go to Carlo first.
Well, it's not particularly pleasant in any way.
No,
It's never particularly been enjoyable.
No.
I tend to just try to block it out,
Yeah.
as it were. There has been times where it has been a thing that has made me close up and just separate myself from society completely, just to try and avoid that entire attack, I suppose. It's not a pleasant thing in any way. There's never been a fun moment of it, but I don't really know. You can't just, social media obviously can't just sit there and go through everyone's messages, because that would be an invasion of privacy as it is. So I don't know what else they could do to try to protect people.
Obviously, from my side of things, are being bullied, getting to the bottom of perhaps what's going on, taking statements to see what we can do. On occasions, we've had to contact the police if it comes under the Malicious Communications Act, but really trying to support people. But I think, as Kylo's saying, it's a very, very difficult problem, and people respond differently in different ways. And different worries about it. So it's just trying to be as supportive as we can.
Okay. Why do you think people cyberbully?
I think it's a power play. Obviously, back years ago, before social media and things, if you had a problem with someone, you'd just go straight up to them and you'd be shouting, or there'd be physical violence. Now, you can kind of sit back behind your computer screen and throw abuse, and there's no boundary there because there's nothing stopping you from doing it, except them just blocking communication, which is then when you go forward and physically or verbally say something. And it is a problem that needs to be dealt with.
Definitely. What do you think?
Yes, I think that's true. It is a power thing. It's easy to do. It's by its nature, it's secretive. And I think it invades the person who's being bullied. I mean, it comes into their home. I mean, as Carlo was saying, you might have had a fight in a school playground, but this can actually come into people's homes, on their phones, and there's a lot of reasons. Often bullies, people who have been bullied themselves, will try and bully others. But there's no simple answer to that, I don't think.
Okay. With the thinking for the people, do you reckon you expand on your answer a little bit more? Well, do you think there's more psychological things going on with him? Do you think
it's more
happened to them?
A sociological factor of they think they're higher up than other people, and to prove that they have to put other people down, which is again is a psychological factor as well. But it is a kind of, I'm better than you, therefore I must put you down to make sure I stay on top. It's a hierarchy.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, it is now our time to end. Thank you very much for watching. Next time, we'll be talking about Asda and the Newport Football Club, but for now, it's a goodbye from me and a goodbye from my guests. We'll see you next time on IWCTV Now. Goodbye.